One of the men who is helping Hayden create his destiny is producer Rick McCallum. Rick knows he has a huge task ahead of him, so is he happy to guide his young star through what lies ahead?
I love the dude. I mean, you'll see, meet him. He's just, he's special, I think. Yeah, very happy with him.
Making a movie is always hard work, but it really helps if you have a great cast around you. And for Rick, he knew he could also rely on returning actors Ewan McGregor and Natalie Portman.
He is a different person now. I don't mean literally Ewan, but he is now. He was very funny because he was talking about the other day. He said, I'm no longer the youngest person on the film anymore. But he's always been. His whole, because when he cracked it, I think he was 17, 18. When thinking for like the last 6, 7 years, he's always been the youngest person on a movie. And now suddenly, he doesn't have an ego problem with that at all. He's the most generous person, especially with Hayden. But suddenly now he's the mentor, And now he's got to help Hayden get through what he's just gone through, And they're very close, I think. They've really become close. So they'll be very helpful to him. Because Ewan's never really gone that traditional American, wacky route into stardom. He's always had a balance between, and he's never really been a quote-unquote big movie star. He's more of an independent, famous person than a Hollywood manufactured one. So it'd be very interesting to see what happens with both of them. Natalie's been fantastic because she's a woman now. She was a teenager. She was 15 when she did episode 1. When she started on episode 1, she's 19 now, and she's gone. She's first year at Harvard and her friends are around, and she's on her own, and her parents aren't here, and so it's a totally different thing for her. But it's a whole different person, Imagine being 15 years old and being, the queen with the hairpiece and the thing, and now she gets to kind of wear sexy stuff, and she's much more attuned to who she is and what she wants to be as a person. Her life's balanced, and she's got a great academic career. So she doesn't take the stardom or any of that seriously on any level, but it frees her with her work. So that's been really fantastic. But I think they work really well together, and they like each other a lot too, which is great. Because it's so interesting when you start to put all of it, in perspective. Because now we can actually see thematically how it all works itself out. And it really is. It's a little boy, the kid that every parent wants to have, smart, mischievous, fun, good looking, got 5 fingers, and everything's perfect. And then what happens? What happens to them?
I think we've got a pretty good idea. But how will Anakin's fate be mapped out? It's all right there in the script for episode 2.
I love the script. I think Jonathan and George did a great job. God knows they had the time to do it. So, no, I'm really happy with it. I think it's going to be. And the other thing is we reached a point now where we really can make this is the first chapter, and then we edit like mad, and then we can actually sit back. Unlike episode 1 where it was just so big. It was so new, it was so hard. Every day you never knew, if you were going to get through the day. Now we feel much more comfortable. And I think we have greater access to be able to sit back, see what we're going to do in March, and do for the pickups and everything. I think you'll end up episode 2 with 2 paths, but you pretty much know which they may go in different directions, but they're going to end up at the same place. And if you do that successfully, you can't wait to get to the 3rd episode, in terms of storytelling. And I think definitely that's where we'll end up on 2. And again, if you care about, Hayden and Natalie, then you really can't wait. It's like when you see something, it's like if you've been in a car crash or anything, there's a moment, there's pure beauty before the unbearable. There's a moment that's quite extraordinary if you've ever been in an out-of-control car that is absolutely breathtakingly beautiful. The senses, the experiences, the images that come to you. But then there's a moment when you're going to hit the wall that becomes unbearable. And You know, if you do, that's the painful physical side of it, and you know, in terms of just life and living and things like that, I think that's going to be the fun part about episode 2, if you really like them. You know, because you know what's going to happen to the kid, and you know it's not good. It's just not good. He's a nice boy, but you know, you see it at work, you see it every moment of your life. But you know, it's really interesting when you know somebody and you can't help them. They have a destiny and they're going to do it, and you want to shake them. And even if you can get to them and you can do it, it still doesn't usually help. Because remember, in the end of the day, he does fulfill his destiny. In the end of the day, he chooses the dark side, but he ultimately does redeem himself.
Like Sam Jackson, Rick found working with George Lucas a fascinating experience.
I mean, we talked every day, you know, so we spent an hour, hour and a half every morning on the phone. We go through every specific. It was better for him to concentrate the time on the thing because he knew he could trust us with costumes and sets and, you know, the basic look and the design of the picture. And, you know, so it was very good. It was very good for everybody. And all of us have been together now for a long time. You know, the production designer, cameraman, editor, you know, it's not like, so there's a shorthand. And actually we got, because of the time difference, we would send him stuff, very meticulous stuff that we needed answers to, and he'd have 8 or 10 hours to respond to it. You know, he'd have his whole day to respond to it. And that meant better thinking, actually. You know, one of the biggest problems with most directors is they lose so much of their brain because they just ask, you know, they got to make decisions instantly. And I found, interesting enough, that I would change the way I structure the prepping of a movie anyway to allow our director to have more of an opportunity to really think about things instead of just having to commit to them. Because that is probably, you know, I mean, I've said this before, nobody ever sits down to make a bad movie. Do you know what I mean? You often sit down to make a car that's cheap or a piece of furniture that'll only last for X amount, you know, but you don't, nobody ever sits down and says, hey, let's make a bad movie. Everybody, and yet there's something fundamentally wrong with so many, and you have to actually say, why has that happened? And usually it's the process. So, you know, when you start to get a handle on it, you don't worry about the things that don't need to be worried about as much. So that part has been easier, but it's been just as hectic not having a script. I mean, I prefer to have one.
So would we, Rick. We'd love to know what's going to happen. But if not having the script was a problem, how was the schedule?
Insane. Well, you know, I mean, we're shooting on stage now. We've really passed the baton over to George, so it's, you know, that works really well. We manage it every day, but it's very, you know, again, this is like, you know, a military thing now, and we shoot 36, 38, 40 shots a day. That's our thing, you know, that's our little driving thing that gets us through each day. We're right on schedule, right where we want to be, maybe even slightly ahead. Personally, I prefer locations. Location is much more exciting for me because anything can happen and you never know what's going to happen. Doesn't matter how well you plan it, you live by the serendipity of the weather, you know, and so many different kind of exigencies in production that can fail through, you know, the actor, you know, having drunk too much the night before and gets in a car accident, or, you know, the driver doesn't see a thing in the bus. Everything can happen on location. It just doesn't, you know, the weather, it starts to rain, then it's cloudy and thing, and you know, anything can happen. There's just, and every day they do. Whereas here, you know, you control your day. You know, it's a very controlled atmosphere. But because technologically we need to be in an atmosphere like that, and also because we have so many different worlds and so many different sets, you know, we're shooting in 56 days, but we got 67 sets. So you can imagine you know, some days when we're moving 2-3 times you know, from one area to the stage to another. And if it's raining, that's about as much drama as we get, because we know the work we got to do. You know, once you walk into we own everything the minute you go through those gates. And we've taken over areas that they never even thought that could be stages, and we built in them. And you'll see that as you go through our art department, our stunt centers, our wardrobe areas. We've all turned into places where we build sets, and that's been fun. I know, and as I said, it's not like a studio really. This is only the second movie that's really been made here at the level that we're making it, and I think only the fifth altogether. So we're changing it day by day. In fact, on stage one, where you were today, that's going to be covered in rain next week for 8 days. We shoot in a torrential rainstorm, with 30-mile-an-hour winds, and so that will be fun. But it's very controlled again, But being in a real one, totally different. You shoot the real rain, and then when you want something that is a little bit more powerful, doesn't look as naturalistic as you want, then you add the CG. It's just, there's stuff called particle animation. It's what made Twister work. It was the really taking particles and animating them to a performance. And that was what was done on Perfect Storm and also in Twister. And to a large degree, it's like we pushed it a whole nother level on the pod race. When a CG element crashes on the ground, and you see it break up apart and fly over, that all of that is performance driven. And there's somebody who's actually creating a performance of a particle.
Right.
And that is really amazing to see come to life. Because there were, Perfect Storm almost cracked it totally with water. Not totally, but some of it's so unbelievably realistic.
Yeah.
And again, that couldn't have been made 2 years ago, 3 years ago. This would have been impossible. And so each film pushes the technology a little bit further. Things that took us, 6 months to do, take us 2 days to do now. There are other challenges that we have. It's equally technologically as challenging as episode 1. But the whole thing about it is you're just trying to learn how to use the tools, But at the same time, that you can achieve something for the amount of money that you have, and also at the same time be able to visualize worlds that you just couldn't do before, because it's big. We have more sets than we did on episode 1. We have more planets. Visually, it's a much more dynamic movie. Unthinkable 3 years ago.
Finally, Rick has particularly enjoyed having the opportunity to come to the UK to shoot scenes for episode 2.
I've lived in England since 1980, so England's much more my home than the United States is. So I love being there. I love shooting there, but I also love it here because it's much easier. The lifestyle is much. This is an interesting place. Visually it's fantastic because it's, it's the size of America with the population of LA and San Diego, and it's, there's a very strong work ethic, but it only lasts for 4 days and 10 hours. And then there's serious partying element to it that doesn't affect me so much, but it affects the crew and the way in which we work. And it's much more laid back. It's much easier. It's nowhere as materialistic, This is America 50 years ago. It's still a much more gentle. I still haven't seen one single policeman, and I've been here for 6.5 months. It's a very interesting place. But to work, it's very easy. No one lives more than 12 minutes away from the studio, which makes it very easy. We only do 5-day weeks instead of 6-day weeks because, again, the work ethic is different. It's much easier. It's not as tough as it is in Europe.
The Star Wars films are basically silent movies, and they're designed as silent movies. Therefore, the music has a very large role in carrying the story, more than it would in a normal movie. Most movies, the story is carried by the dialogue. Star Wars films, the music carries the story. So that the music is extremely important, just as it would be in a silent movie. That connective tissue of how you get there's a lot of very quick transitions in Star Wars. You're moving from scene to scene and scene. It moves very fast. And without that music there to smooth it out and